Welcome to the STARTALK modules on the curriculum development process. There are 3 modules, one for each stage of this process. Stage 1 has the following learning targets. Participants will be able to explain what is meant by a backward design curriculum. They will be able to explain how the necessful, actful, can-do statements are used to create program can-do statements. And finally, they will be able to develop or support the development of Stage 1 of the curriculum for their programs. The STARTALK curriculum itself is designed around the endorsed principles that you see here, and familiarity with these principles will make it easier to develop the curriculum at each stage. This presentation will not cover the principles in depth. For more information, you may wish to go to the site shown here. There you will find expanded definitions and support materials for each principle. Required templates can seem like something that is done for compliance, but in fact, the curriculum template supports a backward designed approach to instructional planning. It involves the identification of connections between program can-do statements, performance assessment tasks, and lesson can-do statements. And finally, it communicates program goals with all stakeholders. The backward design process, the 3 stages, Stage 1, asks that programs identify desired results. Stage 2, that programs determine acceptable evidence. And Stage 3, that they plan the learning experiences and instruction that will support those learning goals identified in Stage 1. In backward design for Stage 1, programs ask themselves the question, what will learners be able to do with what they know by the end of the program? And they begin to provide the answers to that question with the curriculum overview, the daily schedule, the identification of the performance indicators and program can-do statements in both the interpersonal and presentational modes of communication. Beginning with the curriculum overview. The curriculum overview asks that programs identify who their learners will be, giving an indication of the amount of time for the program and the performance level that's anticipated for those students. They also identify the theme of the program. The theme provides the context and the purpose for learning. In this case, you are looking at one of the STARTALK model curricula developed for grades 3 through 5 with the idea of a travel theme, let's go somewhere, developed that way so that any program could use the model curricula and identify what would work best for their particular situation, adjusting as necessary. Here, with a focus on travel, programs are asked to think carefully about how they will incorporate the 5 C's, the standards, into their program. And as you read the description, you can begin to see the reflection of communication, cultures, connections, comparisons, and communities. The next step of Stage 1 development is to think carefully about how well your curriculum overview gives guidance to your program. And so you and your team leader will review that short description of your program with the following questions. Does it seem appropriate for the target learner population? Are those performance levels clearly identified, and do they seem appropriate? Is it clear how the theme of the program provide focus, the context and purpose for what the students will learn? Is that theme appropriate for the age and developmental level of the learners? And finally, is there evidence for the 5 C's in the curriculum overview? With that first piece in place, the program is then asked to identify how time will be used in the program, asking themselves that key question, how will we use the time we have to accomplish all that we want to do? Here you see a sample of how a program might use the opportunity to embed different types of activities, different types of learning throughout the day, moving from opening activities, language classes that introduce language focus, to language classes that begin to wrap up learning for the day and check to make sure that learning has actually occurred. Again, that daily schedule is reviewed by the person who is developing the curriculum and the team leader, asking the questions, does the schedule blend both language and culture activities throughout the day? And does the schedule blend different types of learning activities throughout the day? With the curriculum overview and the daily schedule in place, programs move to the meat of stage 1. They begin to create the program can-do statements, and they do that by using the recently revised Necessful Actful Can-Do statements. Using this document, which is now scaled from novice through distinguished, they will be asked to pick the proficiency range of the program and the performance indicators. Let's look more carefully at how those are identified in the newly revised document. The proficiency benchmark that you see here at the top gives the range of performance for novice without breaking it down in any way. So this is what novice learners are expected to be able to do. The document then moves to the performance indicators that you see here, and the performance indicators break that indication of how well into the low, mid, and high. Programs will use this information to develop their program can-do statements for both interpersonal and presentational communication. Here, you see the definition of interpersonal communication. Learners interacting and negotiating meaning in spoken, signed, or written conversation in order to handle certain tasks, share information, reactions, feelings, and opinions. That definition of interpersonal communication is where the performance indicators come in. First, you see that the definition has been broken into its component parts. These are the language functions showing how learners will use language in the interpersonal mode. In this case, exchanging information and ideas, and then a performance indicator of low, mid, or high. They might also meet their needs or address situations, another language function coming out of the interpersonal mode, and the final language function coming out of the interpersonal mode, expressing, reacting to, supporting preferences and opinions in conversations. The three performance indicators again, low, mid, and high. The same happens for presentational communication, where learners are asked to present information in speaking or writing in order to explain, persuade, and narrate on different topics. This definition is again broken into the key functions, the key purposes of language within the presentational mode. Here, presenting information to narrate about life, experience, or events, with again performance indicators at the low, mid, and high levels of performance. The next function, presenting information to give preferences, opinions, or persuasive arguments, low, mid, and high. And finally, to be able to present information to inform, describe, or explain. Again, with indicators of low, mid, or high. Programs now have 6 language functions, 3 within each mode of communication. It is critically important to note that programs do not have to work with all of the indicators for every language function, nor do they have to work with all 6 language functions. Programs choose what is best for their program and their learners. Let's look at one language function in more detail to see how it carries forward in the development of stage 1. Here you see the interpersonal function framed as a question: how can I exchange information and ideas in conversations? We know from the previous slides that there are performance indicators that are part of what has been created within the successful actful can-do statements. So a program begins by determining the performance indicator that is most appropriate for their students. In this case, with the model curricula, the program chooses Novice Mid. And when you look closely at what is there, and this is provided for you in the document and is selected within the online template, you know what students can do. They can request and provide information by asking and answering a few simple questions with everyday topics, and then you have an indication of how well, using a mixture of practiced, memorized words, phrases, and simple sentences. With that information in place, the indication of the generic what and the specific how well, programs must go to the next step of identifying a very specific program can-do statement indicating how this will happen in their specific program. This statement links directly back to the information provided in the curriculum overview earlier in stage 1. Here, I can have introductory conversations with people I meet on my trip in culturally appropriate ways, and a second program can-do statement, I can ask and answer questions about regions I and others want to visit. So the left-hand side is generic. It could apply to any program that was working with this language function at this level of performance. But the right-hand side, with the program can-do statement, is very program specific and will be connected directly to the theme that was identified in the curriculum overview. It's very important to take note of one key piece as we move from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3. In stage 1, in this model curricula, 6 program can-do statements are identified. In stage 2, those 6 program can-do statements become 6 performance assessment tasks. And in stage 3, where the program can-do statements are broken into lesson can-do statements, there are over 30 lesson can-do statements. This makes it very important that programs are very thoughtful about the number of program can-do statements that they believe they can accomplish in the amount of time that they have available to them. Both the person who is developing the program, the curriculum for the program, and the team leader will review this section very carefully, asking themselves, do the program can-do statements reflect the program overview and theme? Do the program can-do statements align with the performance indicators? And finally, does the curriculum include what seems to be an appropriate number of program-specific can-do statements given the amount of time available to the program? A couple of notes of caution. You may wish to submit stage 1 to your team leader for feedback and approval before continuing to stage 2. Stage 2 builds upon the program can-do statements that were written in stage 1. making it very hard to develop the performance assessment tasks in Stage 2 if the program can-do statements were not correctly written. There is expanded information on curriculum development at the landing page that you see here. There you will find expanded definitions, increased explanations of how to, and perhaps more importantly, model curricula that you may wish to use as written or adapt for your program or use as examples as you develop your own curriculum. Finally, you are invited to test your own understanding of Stage 1 by completing the self-check quiz that accompanies this video presentation. Hopefully, this module has provided useful information on Stage 1, and you will join us for Stages 2 and 3. Thank you for all you do to support STARTALK programs.